If you had 90 days to change your financial reality or lose it forever, what would you cut first? Not add, not learn, not grind harder, cut. Most people hear that word and panic because cutting feels like loss, and loss feels like failure. But what if cutting is the fastest way to power? Imagine this for a second. Your income clock is ticking. 90 days. No extensions. No second chances. At the end of that time, your financial position either shifts upward or it locks in where it is now. That pressure changes everything. And this is where Machiavelli would start, not with motivation, not with inspiration, but with removal. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most motivational content avoids. Money does not respond to effort alone. It responds to leverage. And leverage appears only when excess is stripped away. Machiavelli understood something brutal and timeless. Power does not grow by accumulation. It grows by elimination. He watched men fail not because they lacked intelligence, but because they carried too much, too many loyalties, too many obligations, too many emotional debts. They were busy, they were respected, they were exhausted, and they were powerless. Now imagine Machiavelli standing in your life today, not judging you, not encouraging you, not trying to make you feel better. He wouldn't care about your intentions. He wouldn't care about your stress. He wouldn't care how hard you feel you've tried. He would scan your life like a battlefield, your calendar, your phone, your habits, your conversations, your projects. And within minutes, he would see the problem, not a lack of opportunity, an excess of noise. See, most people chase productivity. Machiavelli chased position. Productivity makes you efficient inside a weak structure. Position makes you dangerous with minimal effort. And here's the tension most people never resolve. You can be disciplined and still poor. You can be focused and still stuck, because discipline applied to the wrong structure only deepens the trap. This is why adding more effort often makes things worse. More hours, more tasks, more side projects. All it does is scatter your energy across low-leverage actions. Machiavelli would call this slow self-destruction. He believed that power accelerates only when distractions are removed faster than opportunities are added. That's why the first phase of his 90-day strategy would feel terrifying to most people, because it doesn't look like growth. It looks like contraction. But contraction is where force is born. Think of a blade. It doesn't cut because it's big. It cuts because everything unnecessary has been removed. Your income works the same way. Right now, your attention is dull, spread thin, blunted by obligations you no longer question. And this is where the real danger lies, not in what you're failing to do, but in what you're still doing out of habit, fear, or guilt. Machiavelli warned that power decays quietly, not through attack, but through tolerance, tolerance of inefficiency, tolerance of distraction, tolerance of people who drain more than they give. And here's the question that should make you uncomfortable. If nothing changes, where will your financial position be in 90 days? Not where you hope, where it's actually heading, because motion is not momentum, and busyness is not progress. The men who rise fast don't move more. They move cleaner. They cut first, then they strike. And in the next part, I'll show you the exact category of actions Machiavelli would eliminate within the first 7 days. Actions that feel productive but silently sabotage income growth. Most people never see them coming. Before Machiavelli ever talked about building power, he hunted something else first. Leaks, not obvious failures, not laziness, not lack of ambition. Leaks, the kind that don't scream, they whisper, the kind that make you feel busy, while quietly draining momentum. Here's the unsettling part. If Machiavelli watched you for one full day, he wouldn't start by asking what you're working on. He'd ask what you keep returning to, because repetition reveals dependency, and dependency is where power goes to die. There is one category of action Machiavelli would eliminate within the first 7 days, without hesitation. Actions that feel responsible, actions that sound mature, actions society rewards with approval. But financially, they are poison. Machiavelli would call them maintenance actions, not growth, not attack, maintenance. These are tasks that preserve your current position while convincing you that progress is happening, replying instead of initiating, optimizing instead of replacing, preparing instead of executing. Most men drown here. They wake up early, they clear inboxes, they organize systems, they refine plans, and at night they feel accomplished. But nothing moved. Income stayed flat. Leverage stayed zero. Position stayed weak. Machiavelli despised this state. He believed maintenance was acceptable only for those already in power. For everyone else, it's a trap disguised as virtue. Here's where tension spikes. Because when people hear this, they resist. They say, but these things are necessary. They keep things running. They prevent collapse. Exactly. They prevent collapse, but they also prevent ascent. Machiavelli understood something brutal about time. Every hour spent maintaining a weak position is an hour stolen from building a strong one. And most people don't fail because they choose the wrong path. They fail because they never abandon the safe one. Let me make this uncomfortable. If your income hasn't moved in the last 6 months, your routine is lying to you, not maliciously, not intentionally, but consistently, because routines are designed to preserve stability, not create power. Machiavelli didn't worship stability. He exploited instability. That's why the first cuts feel reckless to outsiders. He would remove meetings that don't create leverage, conversations that go nowhere, projects with unclear upside, obligations inherited, not chosen, not later, not gradually, immediately, because clarity appears only after subtraction. And here's the paradox most people miss. You don't find high-impact actions. You reveal them by removing everything else. Once the noise disappears, 1 or 2 actions start screaming for attention. Those are the moves that change income, but most men never hear them because the noise never stops. Machiavelli would say, this is why capable men remain invisible. Not because they lack talent, because their energy is hostage, held by habits that once made sense, but no longer serve the mission. And the mission in a 90-day window is simple. Increase leverage, increase speed, increase exposure to asymmetric upside. Everything else is negotiable, including comfort. This is where fear enters, because cutting maintenance actions feels like risking collapse. And Machiavelli would smile at that fear, because he knew something you were never taught. Collapse is only dangerous when you have nothing to replace it with. But when you are building power, collapse is often the signal that movement has begun. The old structure must weaken for the new one to form, and most people never allow that moment to happen. They protect the cage they complain about. In the next part, I'll show you the single question Machiavelli would use to decide what stays and what goes. A question so sharp it instantly exposes whether an action builds power or just feeds comfort. Most people avoid asking it because once you hear the answer, you can't unsee it. Machiavelli didn't waste time debating what felt important. He used one question. A question so ruthless most people instinctively dodge it, because it doesn't care how busy you are. It doesn't care how tired you feel. It doesn't care how noble the task sounds. The question is this: does this action increase my power within the next 90 days? Or does it only make me feel safe? That's it. No spreadsheets, no overthinking, no emotional negotiation, power, or safety. And here's where most men freeze, because they've been trained to confuse safety with intelligence. Safe choices sound wise. Safe actions feel mature. Safe paths earn praise. But Machiavelli knew something modern culture refuses to admit. Safety is the enemy of speed, and speed is everything when time is limited. Imagine him standing over your shoulder as you decide what to do next. You open your laptop, you check messages, you review tasks, and he interrupts you, not harshly, not emotionally, just cold. Which of these moves your position forward now? Silence, because suddenly most of what you're doing fails the test. Responding to messages feels productive, but reactive. Perfecting details feels responsible, but slow. Waiting for clarity feels wise, but delays exposure. Machiavelli believed power rewards those who act before certainty arrives, not recklessly, but decisively. Here's the tension. Most people wait for confidence before they move. Machiavelli moved to create confidence. He understood that certainty is not a prerequisite for action. It's a byproduct of motion. This is why the 90-day window matters. Long timelines breed hesitation. Short timelines force truth. When time is compressed, excuses collapse. Suddenly, you see clearly which actions actually matter. And here's the uncomfortable realization. If an action doesn't increase leverage, visibility, authority, or control, it doesn't belong in the 90-day plan, no matter how familiar it feels, no matter how long you've been doing it, no matter how much of your identity is attached to it. This is where ego gets exposed, because cutting actions means cutting self-image. I'm the reliable one. I'm the helper. I'm the planner. I'm the busy one. Machiavelli would call these identities traps, because they anchor you to behaviors that no longer serve your ascent. Power requires flexibility, and flexibility requires letting old versions of yourself die. That's why most men stay stuck. Not because change is impossible, because identity is expensive to abandon. But Machiavelli didn't care who you were. He cared who you could become under pressure. And pressure reveals truth faster than reflection ever will. So here's the rule he would enforce without mercy. If an action does not compound within 90 days, it's eliminated, not postponed, not optimized, removed. Compounding actions create momentum that feeds itself. One move opens doors to the next. Visibility attracts opportunity. Authority attracts resources. Non-compounding actions demand constant input with no acceleration. They trap you in linear effort. Work more, get the same result. Machiavelli despised linear effort. He sought asymmetry, one move, disproportionate return. And once you begin cutting based on this question, something strange happens. Your schedule thins, your mind sharpens, your anxiety spikes, because you're no longer hiding behind motion. Now, every action carries weight. Every choice is exposed. And this is where fear shows its face. Fear of being seen, fear of being judged, fear of failing publicly. Machiavelli would say this fear is a sign you're finally moving in the right direction, because power is never built in private. It's built under observation. The moment you stop maintaining and start positioning, eyes turn toward you. Some curious, some threatened, some waiting for you to slip. And that's good, because power without resistance is fragile. In the next part, I'll show you why Machiavelli would intentionally provoke resistance during these 90 days, and how controlled friction accelerates income faster than comfort ever could. Most people avoid resistance. Machiavelli engineered it. Machiavelli never trusted smooth paths. If everything around you feels comfortable, he believed you were already losing, because comfort is a signal that no one is threatened, a signal that nothing is shifting, a signal that your position is irrelevant. So during a 90-day rise, Machiavelli would do something that feels counterintuitive. He would create friction on purpose, not chaos, not recklessness, pressure, because pressure reveals hierarchy, and hierarchy determines income. Here's the truth most motivational content avoids. Money flows toward those who occupy contested positions, not the agreeable, not the invisible, the necessary. Machiavelli understood that if no one resists your movement doesn't matter. Resistance is proof of relevance. Think about it. When you make a bold move, when you stop accommodating, when you shift your focus toward leverage, something always happens. Someone questions you, someone tests you, someone pushes back, and most people retreat at that moment. They interpret resistance as a sign they're wrong. Machiavelli saw it as confirmation, because only rising figures draw attention. He wrote about this centuries ago. Those who seek power must expect enemies, not because they are evil, but because movement disrupts balance, and balance benefits those already in control. So Machiavelli would engineer small conflicts early, strategic ones. He would stop over-explaining. He would stop asking for permission. He would stop smoothing edges, not to be rude. To be clear, clarity creates friction, and friction creates visibility. Here's the dangerous mistake most people make. They wait for authority before they act authoritative. Machiavelli inverted this. He acted with authority to create authority. This is how position is claimed, not granted. During the 90-day window, Machiavelli would deliberately choose actions that force decisions, trigger responses, demand acknowledgement, because reaction reveals power dynamics. Who can ignore you? Who must respond? Who tries to undermine you quietly? These answers are gold. They tell you exactly where you stand. Most people never learn this. They remain polite, cautious, and overlooked. They mistake silence for safety. But silence often means insignificance. Machiavelli would say, if your actions provoke no response, you are not acting at the level of power. And here's where fear intensifies, because provoking resistance means risking rejection, risking embarrassment, risking loss of approval. But approval has never paid well. Power does. This is the pivot point. The moment you stop trying to be liked and start trying to be necessary. Not loud, not arrogant, precise. When you move decisively, the world sorts itself around you. Some align, some oppose, some disappear. All outcomes are useful, because clarity replaces confusion, and clarity accelerates income. But this phase is uncomfortable. You'll feel exposed, judged, watched. That's not danger, that's transition. Machiavelli would warn you here. The urge to retreat will be strongest right before your position shifts, because the old structure fights hardest when it's about to lose control. Most men fold here. They soften their stance. They explain too much. They apologize for ambition, and in doing so, they signal weakness. Machiavelli believed weakness invites containment. Once you show hesitation, the system pushes you back into place. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. One bold move followed by retreat destroys credibility. But steady, unapologetic pressure, that reshapes perception. In the next part, I'll show you how Machiavelli would use perception itself as a weapon, and why controlling how others interpret your actions can multiply income without increasing effort. This is where strategy turns psychological. Machiavelli believed reality bends to perception long before it bows to truth. And this is where his strategy becomes dangerous for those who don't understand it. Because income doesn't respond only to what you do. It responds to what others believe you control. Power, in his eyes, was a psychological position before it was a material one. So during these 90 days, Machiavelli wouldn't try to convince anyone verbally. He would let patterns speak, because consistency shapes belief faster than explanation ever could. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men destroy their own leverage by over-communicating. They explain their plans. They justify their moves. They seek reassurance. Machiavelli saw this as a mistake. Explanation signals uncertainty. Certainty attracts alignment. When you act without excessive explanation, people assume intention. And assumed intention creates authority. This is why silence can be louder than words. During his rise, Machiavelli would reduce his availability, not disappear, but become selective. He understood that access determines value. The more reachable you are, the less weight your time carries. This applies directly to income. When everyone can reach you, no one respects your priorities. But when access becomes scarce, perception shifts. Suddenly people wonder, what is he working on? Why is he unavailable? What does he know that I don't? Curiosity replaces familiarity, and curiosity is power. Machiavelli would also control narrative through what he doesn't react to. Silence in the face of provocation, calm in the face of urgency, stillness in moments others panic. These are dominant signals. They communicate, I'm not rushed, I'm not desperate, I'm not reactive. And this is where most people sabotage themselves. They rush to respond, they rush to prove, they rush to defend. In doing so, they hand control to others. Machiavelli, beautiful, fast reactions make you predictable. Predictability makes you manageable. So he slowed his responses, but sharpened his actions. Fewer moves, clearer moves, public enough to be seen, quiet enough to avoid noise. Exam and rarity commands attention. Here's the you don't need more visibility. You need selective visibility. Being everywhere cheapens presence. Appearing only where it matters magnifies it. Machiavelli would choose platforms, rooms, and arenas carefully, not where everyone gathers. And this is where income shifts, because money flows toward those perceived as decision makers, not workers, not helpers, not executors, decision makers. Perception precedes permission. If they see you as someone who supports outcomes, they extract value from you. Same effort, different position, and position multiplies income. But this phase is fragile, because ego can creep in. Silence can become arrogance. Selectivity can become isolation. And he didn't withdraw emotionally. He withdrew strategically, always observing, always listening, always ready to act. In the next part, I'll reveal how Machiavelli would identify the single leverage point capable of changing income fastest, and why spreading effort across multiple opportunities is the slowest way to win. Exam. Machiavelli hated scattered effort. He believed dilution was the silent killer of power. If he had 90 days, he would not chase multiple opportunities. He would hunt one leverage point and press it until something broke. Because pressure concentrated in one place reshapes reality faster than pressure spread thin. Here's the mistake most ambitious men make. They believe diversification is intelligence. Multiple projects, multiple income streams, a lot. It feels safe, it feels strategic, and it quietly guarantees mediocrity. Machiavelli understood that momentum is fragile. It can only survive when force is applied consistently in one direction. So the first question he would ask at this stage is brutal. If only one thing succeeds in the next 90 days, which outcome changes everything? Not improves things slightly, not reduces stress, changes the entire game. Most people avoid this question because it creates responsibility. If only one move matters, failure becomes personal. But power demands focus. Machiavelli believed spreading effort was a form of fear. Fear of committing, fear of being wrong, fear of being exposed. So he chose concentration instead. One arena, one narrative, both of them. Everything else became irrelevant. This is where income accelerates because leverage lives at bottlenecks. Find the constraint and pressure it. For some, it's distribution. For others, authority. For others, access to decision makers. But it's never everything at once. Machiavelli would observe until one pattern stood out. The place where a small move creates an outsized shift. Yes, and once identified, he would restructure his entire schedule around it. This is where obsession replaces balance, not forever, just long enough. Balance is a luxury for the stable. Acceleration requires imbalance. Most men fail here. They touch leverage lightly and then retreat to comfort. They test instead of commit. Machiavelli would do the opposite. He would double down before certainty because this phase feels intense. Friends question you. Old routines collapse. Your world narrows. That's not danger. That's alignment. When everything unnecessary falls away, force increases. Think of a magnifying glass. Scattered light warms, focused light burns. Machiavelli. But here's the hidden threat. Once momentum begins, in new ideas, new offers, new paths, this is the final test. Because nothing destroys momentum faster than premature expansion. Machiavelli warned that rising men are most vulnerable right before breakthrough. In the next part, I'll show you how Machiavelli would protect momentum from sabotage and why most people collapse right when things start working. This is where discipline becomes non-negotiable. Momentum is loud. That's the problem. The moment things start working, noise rushes in. Praise, attention, requests, opportunities. Machiavelli warned that this is where most men lose everything they just built. Not at the beginning, not in struggle, at traction. Because traction creates visibility, and visibility invites interference. He believed momentum must be protected, not celebrated. So during these 90 days, Machiavelli would do something that feels almost unnatural. He would become harder to reach as success increases. Most people do the opposite. They open access. They say yes more often. They explain their progress. And slowly, momentum dissolves into management. Rising men collapse under the weight of attention they didn't control. No matter how tempting, no matter how flattering, it needs pressure, not expansion. Not willpower, design. Machiavelli would lock his calendar, restrict his inputs, reduce decision fatigue. Same routine, same focus, same objective. The I repeated in. And here's the hard truth. If you feel bored during momentum, you're doing it right. But most men interpret boredom as stagnation. So they sabotage themselves. They seek stimulation. They chase novelty. They confuse excitement with progress. What if this stops working? What if I should hedge? These thoughts are momentum killers, because makeup you need to execute. Execution outpaces doubt every time, so he rules that remove choice. No new projects, no new commitments, no new directions, until the 90 days end. This but he ego. Success whispers, you're special. Relax, you've earned flexibility. Mac because ego leaks discipline, and discipline is what got you here. H, calm, controlled, uncelebrated, because celebration relaxes structure, and relaxed structure collapses under stress. In the final part, I'll reveal what Machiavelli would do in the last phase of the 90 days, the moment where effort converts into position, and position converts into money. The final phase is quiet. No drama, no announcements, no. That's how Machiavelli knew it was working, because real power doesn't arrive loudly, it settles. By the end of 90 days, Machiavelli wouldn't be chasing money anymore. Money would be responding to position, and position, once established, changes the rules permanently. This is the part most people misunderstand. They think the goal is income. Machiavelli knew income is a symptom. Power is the cause. So in the final phase, he would do one last ruthless thing. He would lock in the new structure, because temporary gains mean nothing if the system reverts. He would ask, what must never return? Old habits, old obligations, old access points, old compromises, abreast. The old life will try to pull you back. Familiar people, familiar routines, familiar expectations. And if you let them back in, power dissolves quietly. So he would formalize boundaries, not emotionally, structurally. Contracts instead of favors, systems instead of memory, rules. Exam by becoming boring, predictable, stable, unshakable. And this is where money finally accelerates. B. You're no longer convincing, you're deciding. You're no longer chasing, you're filtering. People come to you with proposals instead of demands. And this is the real reward of the 90-day strategy, not hustle, authority. Machiavelli would say, this is the moment you stop trying to be impressive and start being unavoidable. But here's the final twist. This strategy only works once you accept something most people refuse to face. They, not violently, not dramatically, quietly. As you rise, some connections loosen. Wait a minute. Some relationships end without conflict. That's realignment. Machiavelli believed power requires distance. No distance, because proximity breeds entitlement, and entitlement erodes respect. So the final act is acceptance. Acceptance that growth costs comfort. Acceptance that power demands boundaries. Acceptance that not everyone can come with you. You stop apologizing for ambition. You stop explaining direction. And at that moment, the strategy completes itself, not as a phase, as a new identity. This is why Machiavelli's ideas survive centuries, not because. If it was about courage, the courage to cut, to focus, to withstand pressure, to hold structure, and to become someone your old life can no longer contain,